Hi folks, I'm Brandon Reed here with my broadcast colleague Doug Turnbull. Welcome to Raceweek Illustrated Garage Talk. We've got a heck of a lot of racing action to talk about this week, so let's get straight to today's headlines. Brad Keselowski put a new maneuver on the field Sunday at Talladega by breaking the draft of second place Kyle Busch and pulling away to win the Aaron's 499. Steve Torrence pulled off an upset against Tony Schumacher in the Top Fuel Finals to score his first career win at the Southern Nationals. More on that in just a few minutes. Brandon McReynolds wins his first ARCA Series event with a last lap pass at Talladega. And the Georgia Racing Hall of Fame has announced the Fast 15 semi-finalists for the 2012 class of inductees. You can read more about these and more headlines at RaceweekIllustrated.com. We start off this week close to home as the NHRA Full Throttle Drag Racing Series did battle in the 32nd Annual Southern Nationals at the Atlanta Dragway in Commerce, Georgia this past weekend. And what a weekend it was for Steve Torrence. For a start, he made his way to his first Top Fuel final, facing off against the man everybody felt they had to beat, Tony Schumacher. Then in the final, Schumacher goes up in smoke and Torrence wins his first Top Fuel Wally. In Funny Car, it looked like Robert Hight was going to keep John Force Racing's win streak alive, but Ron Capps and the Napa Dodge had other ideas. When Hight's run was up in smoke, it was Capps scoring the Funny Car win. In Pro Stock, it was an all-Summit racing showdown as the Summit-sponsored cars of Greg Anderson and Jason Line faced off in the final. Anderson came away with the victory, winning on a hole shot. And in Pro Stock Bike, it was defending national champ Eddie Krawick winning his second event of the season as he beat out Michael Ray in his first career final round showing. Joining us now on the Money Max race line is Raceweek Illustrated's Pete McCole, who was covering the Southern Nationals out at the Atlanta Dragway over the weekend. Pete, the big story of the weekend has to be Steve Torrence. He not only wins his first Top Fuel event in his first Top Fuel final round appearance, but he does it against Tony Schumacher, the guy everybody has to beat.
Yeah, Steve Torrence was definitely the big event of the weekend, the big story of the weekend, and finally breaking through to collect his first Top Fuel victory. And it's a great story of a little team taking on the big boys, taking on the multi-car teams, the multi-million-dollar teams, and winning. And you could see this team kind of building this up in the last couple of weeks. They've qualified really well. They got the top qualifier in Charlotte a few weeks back, and everyone was like, wow, these guys are coming up and winning rounds. And you could just feel it. It was just a matter of time before they got to the top. They're hanging in there in points, and they really came through with some round wins in Charlotte, and they proved they were a competitor and force to be reckoned with. Torrence has really been kind of the feel-good story the last couple of weeks. He's a former national top alcohol title winner in 2005. He moved on to Top Fuel and then started his own team. So this is kind of a family-owned and operated team. They don't have a big budget to spend, yet they're there every week. They're making rounds, and you can see this team starting to work their way up this season. And they qualified well in the last few weeks, didn't fare as well in the early rounds, but on Sunday it all came together. They took on the Sarge, they took on Don Schumacher Racing, made a clean pass all the way as Schumacher backed off, and it was a great win, great to see Steve Torrence and that team breaking the win column in Top Fuel.
The other thing that everybody was keeping an eye on over the weekend at Commerce was the track temperature. There was such a change between Friday and Monday that had to have everybody scrambling.
You know, normally you see speeds increase on the second day of qualifying, and that wasn't the case at all here in Atlanta over the weekend. Friday's track temperatures were so much cooler. You saw record-breaking speeds, and like I said, normally you see the speeds pick up on Saturday. Wasn't the case, as you could see the teams really couldn't get a handle on the track conditions on Saturday. Cars going up in smoke all afternoon, and the fields largely remain unchanged from Friday to Saturday, with the top 12 in all four divisions kind of remaining consistent. So it really kind of had crew chiefs kind of scrambling to try and figure out what they're going to do, and it had a major effect on who qualified where and who didn't make the show.
Now, the other big story coming out of Sunday, obviously, Ron Capps takes down John Force's teams. They had been dominating in the funny car division since the start of the season. Ron Capps steps in there with a little Napa know-how, and he takes out Robert Hight in the final.
Yeah, he's been chewing on that bone for a couple of weeks now, and everyone's been wondering who's going to be the David that finally takes down the Goliath. And John Force Racing has been having their way with the funny car division since the start of the season, with 6 straight national events wins for the team with John Force and Robert Hight and Mike Neff. And everyone wondered who was going to be the one to beat them, and if it would come down to a final round showdown or if they would falter early. And you had Height taking #1 qualifier and going to the final against Ron Capps, who's already been beat once this season by Height, and they both hit the lights about the same time, but Height starts to lose it. Capps goes on to the win, and you know that Capps has been grinding at it. This is redemption for him for missing the field in Vegas and having to switch crew chiefs, but he seemed to gel well with Ron Tobler. They came back strong in Charlotte, qualified well, made it to the finals in Houston last week, so you could see he was getting right back in the saddle, and now he's right back in the mix in the point standings, and I think he's going to be a huge factor in the points race this season.
All right, Pete, thanks for all your hard work covering the Southern Nationals this weekend and all the hard work that you do for us at Raceweek Illustrated. We appreciate everything you do.
Happy to be there. Thanks, Brandon.
In other headlines, the Georgia Racing Hall of Fame has announced the Fast 15 semifinalists for the 2012 class of inductees into the Hall of Fame. Of the 15, 5 people will be chosen by a panel to be inducted in October. The Fast 15 are 1970 Daytona 500 champion Pete Hamilton, NASCAR driver Charles Barrett, Ford Racing's Dick Brannon, veteran racer Charlie Burkhalter, Pioneer NASCAR owner Frank Christian, longtime Macon area racer Tommy Clenard, multi-time Dixie Speedway champ Bill Ingram, longtime NASCAR competitor Bobby Johns, all-time NHRA Pro Stock driver Warren Johnson, short track veteran Jabez Jones, dirt track Hall of Famer Doug Kinnemer, Pioneer female racer Ethel Flock Mobley, drag racing legend Houston Platt, International Motorsports Hall of Fame member Louise Smith, and sprint car legend Herman Wise. The 5 inductees into the Hall of Fame, this will be fun, will be announced during the Hall of Fame's 10th anniversary celebration event, which will be held on May 26th at the Hall of Fame in Dawsonville, Georgia. For more on these and other stories, visit RaceweekIllustrated.com.
Now, Doug, the other big story to come out of this past weekend was all the action at Talladega Superspeedway. You were out there. How about that maneuver that Brad Keselowski came up with to break Kyle Busch's draft on the last lap and win the race?
Usually the second place driver is the one that's been in the catbird seat, but this time Brad Keselowski had a strong enough car and figured out what he called a geometric move to be able to break up that draft and keep a bubble between he and second place Busch.
Well, here's what Brad had to say after the win.
You know, we just had a solid day. I mean, pit stops were solid. Strategy was solid. Came down towards the last stop there, and I was a little nervous we were going to be tight on fuel, or I should say Paul was, and I was nervous for him a little bit. And, you know, it worked out. You know, those green white checkers definitely held us tight. But, you know, then you start to get to those closing laps, and you just know you got to be in the top 4 or 5 to have a shot at it. You know, everybody on the team, Joey Meyer, my spotter, did a great job of keeping us out of trouble and keeping us in that top group. Knowing where the runs were and knowing how to fend them off one at a time. Our car was a little bit faster than what we had at Daytona, which I thought was key to being able to run up front. So, you know, just everything came together.
Now, Doug, there was a lot of carnage out there with the return of pack racing. What was your take on what we saw Sunday?
Well, I thought it was a lot better than the single car or the single pod racing, because then you were absolutely dependent upon somebody. Sure, you still needed a drafting partner if you wanted to get up and catch the leaders, say, at the end of the race, but you could just go switch back and forth with whoever you wanted. And during the pod racing, you had just as many cars get wrecked. It's just you had a lot of little bitty wrecks scattered through the race, whereas this one was kind of the Talladega that I think the fans are wanting to come back again, and that was, you know, two or three 10-car crashes at the end of the race.
Now, on Saturday, Joey Logano nips Kyle Busch at the finish line to score the win, but really there were 2 stories that kind of overshadowed that. The first, the very frightening crash that Eric McClure had, went head-on into the safer barrier there on the backstretch, was transported to an area hospital for observation. You were there. What was your take on that accident?
Yeah, well, it was nasty looking for sure. It didn't look like he had a chance to brake. It looked like maybe because he made some contact that the throttle had been hung, because he went straight into that inside safer barrier there, the inside wall. And as we know, we're glad that NASCAR and a lot of short tracks too have the Hans devices and have these things. And Eric only suffered a concussion. He had some mild internal bruising and some soreness, I think they said, and he's still being evaluated. And as of time here taping, we don't know if he's going to be in the race at Darlington this coming weekend nationwide.
All right, now let's also talk about the Danica Patrick Sam Hornish situation. Hornish has a tire going down. They're coming to the finish line. She's trying to pass. Hornish can't turn the car. They make contact and end up in the wall. And after the checkered flag, she dumped him in turn 1. Not the kind of move I want to see out of a professional race car driver.
Well, the one thing she did do right is that she immediately went into damage control about a day or two later and went to make sure and apologize and talk to the different people like the nationwide competition director Joe Balash and to Sam Hornish Jr. and they found out that Hornish did have a tire going down. That's why he got into her, and that's why he ended up the retaliatory wreck being a lot worse than what we would have, than what we thought. It turned out that she just was trying to hit him and not trying to put him in the wall. So Danica did do a bad thing, considering she hadn't earned her stripes necessarily in NASCAR, but at least everything kind of amends have been made.
We've got to take a quick break, folks. When we come back, we'll sit down with Outlaw Late Model racer David Murphy. As we go to break, we want to take a minute to pass on our condolences to the family of Larry Fleeman. Larry was the father of late model champion Russell Fleeman and grandfather to Legends racer Amber Fleeman. Larry passed away last week after an extended illness. He was a huge contributor to Georgia racing and a friend to everyone at the racetrack. Our thoughts and prayers are with the Fleeman family at this time. We'll be right back. Hi folks, I'm Brandon Reed from Raceweek Illustrated Garage Talk, inviting you to join me for the Georgia Racing Hall of Fame 10th anniversary celebration May 26th here at the Georgia Racing Hall of Fame in Dawsonville, Georgia. There's something on tap for all kinds of fans, as you can meet the heroes of Georgia racing with an autograph session, tour the Hall of Fame, take in the car show, the swap meet, great food, and more. That's all waiting for you at the Georgia Racing Hall of Fame in Dawsonville, May 26th.
Are you temporarily short of cash and you need to keep the bills paid? Or maybe you just need a little extra until your tax refund comes in? I have the answer for you. Money Max Title Pawn. With a clear title to your car, you can be in and out of Money Max in a matter of minutes. And no credit check ever. Money Max Title Pawn, 2293 North Elm Street in Commerce.